The New York Jets, our 2023 New York Jets preview. Last season, it's kind of shows you the underlying foundation of talent on this team. They have the offensive and defensive rookie of the year. They've got some nice pieces on both sides of the ball. Their front played extremely well. Breece Hall flashed. The quarterback fails to kind of tie it all together. He was arguably the worst starting quarterback in the league when he got his chance again. The progress just wasn't there. And they get to the end of the year and they say, listen, we have enough here that we have to try to salvage it in some way. And the way they tried to salvage it is by going and getting one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And now we see
one way to do
how
it.
That's going to go.
Yep. I know. I just have Aaron Rodgers joins an elite defense. We'll see how this goes. That's this Jets team. I mean, they were flying high up until midway through the year. And that's when
they sure were, man.
The quarterback woes happening. I feel like if I wrote an article and I didn't mention every Jets player that was having a good year, I'd just get yelled at for a week.
They were feeling themselves for most of the first half of the season.
They were.
Hard to blame them considering what the last few years had looked like.
I have some family members from that area of the country. They let me know. I was a little too low on Zach Wilson last year, but I got to see them at a wedding and talk about it. So that was a lot of fun. But it's a really interesting team. I mean, this defense is fantastic. I believe we both had them very high up in our rankings.
Yeah, we can talk about it.
Adding Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, adding Aaron Rodgers. I mean, there's not much more to get into other than that. That's kind of the storyline with this team, and we all know where they sit right now.
That late career quarterback swing has been a mixed bag of late. We've seen it go very well. Tom Brady being the best possible example. The Rams won a Super Bowl by trading for Matthew Stafford in his 30s. Peyton Manning comes over at age 36. The Broncos go on an absolute tear. Rodgers is older than Peyton Manning was when they made that move. He's going to be 40. Maybe the physical cliff comes a little bit quicker than we might expect. But we've also seen this go horribly. Yeah. Russell Wilson last year, Matt Ryan signing with the Colts. More hope about Aaron Rodgers because he's played well, I think, more recently than either of those guys. But it's been a mixed bag when they've done that. At the end of the day, this had to happen. This was the best possible exit plan for this team. When you miss on the second overall pick and you can go get a guy like this, it didn't cost them that much, right? They swapped picks this year. It's going to be a first next year if he doesn't get hurt. Rodgers renegotiates. He gets his number down, so they have some cap flexibility. This was the best possible solution for the problem that they faced, but now it has to happen.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's like he took the pay cut, and then the Packers drafted a bunch of pass catchers. It was like both parties were like, yeah, you screw me. Yeah, screw me, screw you. Screw me, screw you. Like that, they both did the things that they didn't want to do for each other, and they did it once they broke up out of the relationship. I love it.
It's that video of the guys on the street in New York fighting, just like pointing at each other all the way down the road. Yeah, that's exactly flick each other out. That's exactly what it feels like with these two sides right now.
Yeah.
All right. Biggest question about the Jets offense 2023. You could take this in a bunch of different directions.
But I mean, first and foremost, if anyone's watched Hard Knocks, this will kind of give you the warning signs of this. It's the offensive line is my big, huge, gigantic question mark.
I feel so bad about complaining that Hard Knocks had lost some of its bite in the last couple of years. And after that first episode, so that episode aired the night that I was there that day. And he was asked about the offensive line during a press conference, and they're talking about it. And that was the talk of the entire situation around camp. And he had said previously that he wanted the 5 to be in place after the Carolina preseason game. Oh boy, is that not the case.
No,
they are not ready to figure out who that 5 is. And to see that sort of window into trepidation about a position group, just a coach feeling the urgency surrounding the rest of the team, and to put that group on blast in front of everyone like that.
Yeah.
I thought it was actually a really interesting window into the dynamics of what's happening there right now.
Usually the position getting called out kind of thing, or a player getting called out, is like in the season, not week 2 of training camp. Like that, usually maybe it's a little fire in the offensive, maybe the offense position unit, like, the offense together, the OC and everything, not in front of the whole team, not in front of the whole cameras. That showed me it's like they see it. It's not like they have any thoughts that it might go in a different way. I also, by the way, I wrote down trepidation in my notes. So the fact that you just said that is really blowing my mind right now. I think I wrote it wrong because it's got the red underline under it, but I did write that in my notes. But even like with Rodgers last year, and real quick, I want to just talk about this, is that talking about all those quarterbacks that switch teams, Matt Ryan probably being, and Russell being terrible examples of what could happen when you make these moves. Rodgers still had the flashes, still had the FU throws and all those types of things. It was a lot of him kind of I'm not going to throw it over the middle of the field. We're running a deep pass. All right, fine. I'll just fling it 50
He was
yards.
actively raging against the offense.
He was.
He was putting on a protest. You could feel it. He led the league in targets behind the line of scrimmage. It was like 30% of his dropbacks, and he was 5th in targets at 20+ air yards. The guys that he was behind in that stat, Marcus Mariota, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones.
No. Oh, no. A lot of bad offenses and the Falcons.
Well, Marcus Mariota was one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the league last year.
Terrible.
That was not an NFL passing game. Like they were trying to construct it out of spare parts. And the same was true of the Bears offense. You have the disaster with Russell Wilson and the Broncos, and then Mac Jones deal with Matt Patricia.
Oh my God.
That's the list.
What did I call it? Performative deep balls. Yes. That's what it was last year. It was truly just like, oh, this is what you're going to call. Well, guess what? The term for usually the post or the go on those concepts is the alert. That's like you throw it once a game, maybe once every 2 games, and he was throwing it every time. It was just like he was unpinning that grenade and throwing as far as he could. It was like you said, he was protesting the offense. But even with that Packers offense and some of the flashes, he would not throw the ball over the middle. The guys would be running wide open. He's like, I'm not doing this because it might get picked off and everyone's going to blame me. Is that the run game in Green Bay was damn good. Really, really good. And that's going to be a big difference between what he was facing or what he was doing in Green Bay last year, the last couple of years, to what he is facing now. Because he's going from a Packers run game that I believe was 4th in running backs. Yeah, 4th best rushing offense in terms of running back runs, because Rodgers is not running like zone read or anything in the entire NFL. And he's going to a team that ranked 25th or was dead last in success rate in the Jets and their offensive line and everything. So that bar that really lifted that offense, the side-to-side throws in that run game, it's going to be a little different. And that's going to be really interesting. Does he start taking those chances again? He might have it in his bag, but does he go to it? And how quickly does it go to that? And if the New York media gets on him, does he just go, screw this? And he's back to the performative deep ball. So it's like, there's just a lot of human element to his reads and to what he does, especially with offensive line, how he's feeling about that.
One note about the run game, then I want to talk about some of that human element. Yep. The running game just fell apart in the back half of last season. It was awful. And so after Breece Hall got hurt, when they signed Dalvin Cook, I think a lot of people are looking at that and saying, well, how long is Breece Hall going to be out? Even with Breece Hall on the roster, I can understand them thinking they need another running back.
Yeah.
The numbers last season, back half of the year, they were 31st in percentage of runs for negative yardage. They were dead last in rushing success rate. 67 running backs last year got at least 50 carries in the NFL.
Okay.
James Robinson, Michael Carter, and Zonovan Knight ranked 62nd, 65th, and 66th in success rate. And that's not, they weren't facing stacked boxes.
No.
The numbers were actually pretty favorable in their favor. So you can understand, one, why they thought they needed to run another running back independent of Breece Hall's timeline, and two, why they felt like they needed to move on from the offensive coordinator and the offensive line coach, even if the quarterback was the main problem there.
Right. It was ugly.
You talk about raging against the offense. One of my big questions is, what is this thing going to look like?
Yeah.
Because it's so tempting to say he won 2 MVPs in Green Bay. His offensive coordinator from Green Bay is coming over here. He didn't like the offense in Green Bay.
Nope.
And now he's in charge. You gave him the keys to the kingdom. So now what does this look like? And I think it's going to be a lot more similar to some of the elements we saw from the old Rodgers offenses when it was purely West Coast. He's talked about this. He is in love with the West Coast offense and everything that it allows him to do with control and having his finger on the remote. So in 1989, Paul Hackett was the head coach at the University of Pittsburgh. Paul Hackett is one of the godfathers of the West Coast offense. There was a GA on that 89 Pitt team.
It's McCarthy, right?
Young Pitt guy named Mike McCarthy.
Yeah.
So all of this DNA, and Paul Hackett is Nathaniel Hackett's dad. So even if Nathaniel Hackett was the offensive coordinator for the Packers when they were running this system that Rodgers didn't really like but won 2 MVPs in, his dad is true. Like, he has the West Coast offense in his blood.
Yeah.
And he's had a life before he worked with Matt LaFleur. So I don't think this is going to be simple, like copy and paste a lot of Green Bay stuff. I think it's going to be a lot more old school Rodgers stuff that he actually prefers. Is that a good thing?
Right. That's what I'm getting scared about, hearing all that. The term that I think we started using with the Packers offense the last few years, it was a greatest hits offense because they ran a little bit of everything. And LaFleur even said on on Jordan's podcast series, the Play Caller series, I almost called it Playmakers. Play Caller series was that it was LaFleur even said, he goes, I'm fine stealing from everybody. Like they, which is awesome to hear because so many coaches go, I don't steal at all. It's like, yeah, you do. Come on. That's kind of showed what that offense was. It was a little bit, they were running Arians Bucks stuff. They were running their zone stuff, the Shanahan stuff with the play action game. They ran everything. And then it was also Hackett was the compromise between LaFleur and Rodgers. That was his role. And he also wasn't calling plays, which is another thing.
One more wrench to throw into this. The last time we saw him do that was in Denver last year. And the time before that was in Jacksonville when that offense wasn't.
Before that was Buffalo.
This is one of those moments. Aaron Rodgers is the offensive coordinator.
Yes.
We know this. That is how this is going to go. For better or for worse, that's how this is going to go. The line is a serious concern. Talked about that. Dwayne Brown still isn't back at left tackle. The right tackle competition is between Max Mitchell and Billy Turner, and that's not going great. So is the best move eventually to play Elijah Vera Tucker at tackle, and then you slide Wes Schweitzer in at guard? Joe Tippmann, who they drafted in the second round, is a center, and he's been getting some reps with the ones, but does that really help you? Because that's actually where you have the most depth. They're just trying to figure this thing out. And I don't know what it's going to look like by the end. The saving grace is the skill position guys you can feel pretty good about.
Pretty cool.
Garrett Wilson looks like a superstar. Going back and watching him from last year, he's even better than I remember.
And real quick, but this type of offense that we think Rodgers wants to run, that is Garrett Wilson. Like, he is the perfect receiver for this type of offense. Like, quick game and yak. Oh my God, that is what Garrett Wilson does best.
His release game is nasty. I mean, talking about Devontae Adams and what he was great at. Wilson's like route running kind of technicalities down the field, maybe not as refined as you want them to be.
He looks like he's Euro stepping.
But his release game is phenomenal. I mean, he gets an immediate separation off the line of scrimmage, and I think that's going to be really attractive to a guy like Rodgers.
Absolutely.
And Breece Hall looked like a star last year.
He was awesome. He was so good last year until he got hurt. I mean, the Broncos game at Denver, oh my God, he looked so good in that game. The run game looked good in that game. Weird. But no, I think, like you said, the skill guys, even outside Garrett Wilson, like, Alan Lazard and Corey Davis aren't aces or anything, but they're nice role players and they can block. And they're going they're zone leaders.
Skill set makes sense when you kind of drop him in with the rest of it. As a group, I actually like it. And I think the Wilson being that true number one right away is maybe what they didn't have in Green Bay last year.
All the signaling stuff that Rodgers likes to do to his receivers, like Wilson's going to benefit from that so much. And also, by the way, I've never interviewed him. I've never really heard a lot of interviews with Garrett Wilson. Love him in Hard Knocks. Like he has a great personality and it's really cool. So I just wanted to throw that. I know it's just edited footage and everything, but his personality is really magnetic. I think is a good way to put it.
How it all synergizes between what the offense looks like in the play caller and whether the offensive line comes along, I think are the two biggest questions. There's some things to be excited about, but there's a lot of uncertainty here. Biggest question about the defense heading into the season.
Just how dominant are they going to be? I think this unit's fantastic, and I think you're even higher than I am on them. This all systems go, I think, for this defense. This front is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous what this front is, how deep it is, what they can do without blitzing, and they can just get after it. And not like they have some, you can see the DNA of the Legion of Boom teams as far as, hey, we're just going to rotate these pass rushers. We're going to run a bunch of games and we're not going to run funky coverage looks. And we're just going to go and you got to beat us. And that's awesome. They had the second highest quarterback knockdown rate last year, and they blitzed at the third lowest rate in the NFL.
Yeah, 29th in blitz rate, 6th in pressure rate. That's a combo that you want to see. That's what you're after.
Bryce Huff, I would put at what? Maybe their 7th guy that they have.
And he was maybe the most effective per snap pass rusher in the NFL last year.
Yep. Second in hurries per pass rush stat, 9th in hits. And if you watch him against the Panthers, you would think he's an all-pro. Like in the preseason game, like he actually terrorized Ike Ekwonu, who I'm very high on. And then they got 2 first-round picks coming off the bench, and Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald as rotational guys. They don't even have to start. It's a ridiculous front, and it's not like they're just built in the front and the back end you're worried about. They have Sauce Gardner, who, by all accounts, including us, is a top 2 or 3 corner in the NFL. Might be even top
DJ
1.
Reed's pretty good on the other side.
And DJ Reed's
They've got some good players. Jordan White has been a good
yeah.
signing for them at safety. It is a very good unit top to bottom. Trying to poke holes in it. They were the healthiest defense in the league last season. So that is not going to happen again. And there are some positions where they're better set up to sustain some injuries than others. If they get a couple guys on the front miss some time, they can figure that out because they've got enough dudes there. At corner, it's a different story. Mm-hmm. If Sauce gets hurt, what does this defense look like? And you could say that about any team, but there are some, the Bills are one of them, where if a corner gets hurt, they're positioned where they could probably survive. I don't know if that's necessarily true with the Jets. So their health luck is one thing to consider, but they had no turnover luck last year. They were 28th in the total value generated off turnovers while being one of the best defenses in the league. They recovered 4 of 16 fumbles last season on defense, according to Football Outsiders, and that tends to normalize. They benefited from a lot of drops, but I think in the end, this stuff comes out in the wash, and they're really, really good again because of the players that they have. The front is better than it was last year. They lost 500 pass rush snaps and 42 pressures from Sheldon Rankins and Nathan Shepard. But now you bring in Quentin Jefferson, and do we see John Franklin Myers step inside more in some of those third down looks because you have Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald as more designated pass rush types? So I think overall they're fine. Like the personnel is fine. Top to bottom, they're great. And it's not complicated. Like it's funny that 2 years ago they blitzed and played man on third down at like one of the highest rates in the league. And then last year they did neither of those things because they didn't need to
at all.
This staff does not overcomplicate things.
They even put the corners on one side of the field. Like they're very simple. I know, but the Sauce point is very important. You know, he's not the biggest guy. He's been healthy throughout his whole career, as far as I know. I don't know him his whole life, but it's watching him and what they do with him. He's truly, it's Sauce Island. Like, I mean, they are able to get away with stuff because of what he can do. So that's a great point to make. And then we haven't even mentioned Quinnen Williams, who is incredible. Is
and I honestly think could be even better. I feel like his so best days, he's 25 years old.
Yeah.
He is 25 years old.
He's younger than Hendon Hooker, who just got drafted at quarterback.
Putting that in the middle, combined with the guys they have on the outside, I mean, it is a truly terrifying group. The one thing to consider, and this isn't fun to talk about, but I think it's worth mentioning, coverage is not sticky from season to season. Even if the guys have played well, and you want to project that same level of play moving forward. Like I think Sauce is a superstar and he's one of those guys that can kind of stave that off in the way that Jalen Ramsey has. But DJ Reed, does he play as well this year? Jordan Whitehead, does he play as well this year? That stuff can just ping pong a little bit more than we like to admit. So that's one kind of element of uncertainty or volatility that you throw into the mix here. But I'm really just mentioning it because I want to try to like interrogate some of this stuff because I almost feel too good about them.
That's how it is when it's nothing but positive notes. And it's like, oh, even a linebacker. I like that linebacker. It's like, no, that's very, very important to bring up. I mean, there's so much with corner play that I am even just prospects wise that I have likened to pitchers a little bit, like in baseball, where there is just sometimes shit happens. Sometimes it's like I said, we were talking about AJ Terrell the other day. Excuse me.
It's a great example. It's a great example.
You could play great for 35 plays, 35 passes, and then you get dunked on twice, and then everyone goes, well, you suck now. But it's like, but those 2 plays did matter. And it's like, you just don't know. You could get 12 strikeouts, and then you give up 1 home run. And it's like, oh, well, shoot, now we lost 1-0. You just don't know. Like, and it just goes up and down like that. So it's a great point to make about corner play. One, Quinnen Williams stats I have to throw in because I thought it was hilarious. He finished 4th among all pass rushers in QB hits per pass rush snap. Only ones above him were Nick Bosa, Trey Hendrickson, and Matt Judon. So 3 edges, and then there's just Quinnen Williams.
He's a defensive tackle. I mean, he is a absolute superstar.
And great personality too. A lot of good personalities on this team.
It's gonna be a fun team to watch. That's one of those defenses that is similar to how I felt about the Niners over the last couple of years. Or
they have a personality.
Cowboys, where you can just feel them when they play. And I think that's even going to be turned up a notch this year when you think about the pass rushing bodies. Jermaine Johnson looks incredible in camp. Like he's transformed his body. He's in much better shape. He played like 180 snaps for them last year. So he's just stepping in as a first-round pick now into a full-time role as a pass rusher. Like that's how many, that's the layers of depth this team has had at those spots. So it's going to be really exciting. All right. X factor for the New York Jets. Who you got?
Offensive line and run game in general. That's what it is. I can't really shake it in another way. It's going to be a lot of their success. I think Rodgers is still more than fine. He's still very talented. He still can make all the throws. Whether he feels comfortable enough to make them is going to be a huge thing. And that's going to rely on the offensive line because he's comfortable with the play caller. And I think he's going to have enough weapons. So it's going to start with that offensive line and whether he can get into good situations because of their run game. So it's going to, a lot hinges on their season with that.
The offensive tackles, like the right tackle specifically, like whoever it ends up being. Is it Elijah Vera Tucker? Is it one of those guys in the competition? I don't think they're going to add somebody from the outside just because they don't have a lot of money to work with. They just signed Dalvin Cook to that contract. So, and again, like we mentioned with the Bills, not a lot of spare tackles just lying around in the NFL. Right. So can they figure this out with the guys they have in the building? I think is going to be the biggest question.
Yeah.
Breakout player for the New York Jets. What do you got for me?
I didn't want to be a caricature myself, so I almost went Garrett Wilson, but the guy won
That's
freaking Offensive Player of the Year.
bullshit.
So I
know.
So I went Quincy Williams because I thought he broke out last year. He got paid last year.
He broke out for you.
He did. He did, because I could not. I think I tweeted more. Like, if you just even search his name, it's just 5 tweets from me, and then it's like nobody else. It's like I'm just this one man highlight reel. I'm what do they call just bombs production for Quincy Williams. That's what I am, the YouTube guy. But he already had a career year and got paid last year. This guy's just a lot of fun. He plays with his hair on fire. He'll make mistakes, but I think he's a converted safety. So I think he's still learning the linebacker position. He got way better last year. He's playing with a perfect partner in CJ Mosley to kind of get him in the right direction. But this guy, I've made the joke, but he delivers spears like Goldberg, and it's really fun. And he can cover. He hits guys. He can blitz. He's just a really fun player. And I think on a really good defense, he'll stand out more because of his highlights.
We've talked about this with other really good defenses around the league. These kind of second or third tier role players are when you can really feel what a unit is.
Yeah.
The guy in San Francisco I talk about is Drake Greenlaw.
Yeah.
A guy like Dorrance Armstrong with the Cowboys. That's what Quincy Williams is for this Jets team, where you could just feel who they are through that guy specifically. He is that element.
He's the mascot.
Yeah.
He really is, though.
I was going to go with Jermaine Johnson. I think that's a natural choice. I almost felt it was too obvious. I think he's a very good one with more reps this year. I'm going to say Tony Adams, who's their other safety. He was an undrafted free agent last year, was from Illinois, tested very well at his pro day, like has a lot of athleticism to him. But again, one undrafted. They traded for Chuck Clark because the Ravens have a little bit of a glut at safety with Kyle Hamilton there. So I thought it was a very smart trade. Drop Chuck Clark into this defense. Oh boy, he gets hurt and they sign Adrian Amos. And so your mind goes to, okay, the Adrian Amos will start. He'll be the other safety. Tony Adams has held him off. And this notable. Staff likes Tony Adams. He's a guy with a lot of traits. So is he somebody that over the course of the season within this really good defense could maybe pop in an unexpected way? I thought that was more fun than naming another first round pick as a breakout player.
No, I like that a lot. And I want to name Breece Hall, but he might be banged up for the first half of the year with his knee. And so, no, I really like that one. I definitely, when you threw that name out there, I was like, oh, okay. Because the fact that he's being out Amos, who was still a plus player last year for the Packers, that's notable. And
I think that's good.
That's a good sign. And maybe, they don't sign him. They didn't sign Amos. So like, oh yeah, to be depth. It was like, no, he's playing for us. But the fact that he's beating him out is great.
What does success look like for the New York Jets this season?
Super Bowl. I mean, making a playoff. I mean, you don't sign Aaron Rodgers and nuke your future to let's win a playoff game.
They have the longest playoff drought of any professional sports team in America. They have to win the Super Bowl for it to be a success.
I said make the Super Bowl, but I should say make the Super Bowl. But I mean, I even was going to say, even making the playoffs would be, or a team that's all in would be a huge success. I'm sure a lot of people would be happy, but you don't make this trade without shooting for the moon. And I think they have the same mindset. I mean, just look at the magician on Hard Knocks.
Jesus.
He got so much airtime. It was like the first 15 minutes
so
of the
much
show.
So much airtime.
I was okay, cute. Oh, it's still
they didn't
going.
want to show the entire half-hour rant of Salah shitting all over the offensive line, so they had to give the magician more time.
It's ridiculous.
I'm splitting the difference. I'm going to say win a playoff game.
That's
because Rodgers' contract and the young pieces that they have, this isn't a one and done thing, hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully you got a couple years to get there. So if you can make some real progress and win a playoff game this year, I think that Jets fans would be celebrating.
I'm sure. But I think they're also Have you talked to Jets fans? They're up there.
You're
but
probably right.
No, but I think you're exactly right, though. I think for just the franchise and for that fan base, that would just be so huge. Just put for once a good taste in their mouth. It's been so long. So I hope they do get that at the end of the year.